So, Japan is probably one of the most interesting countries or places that I've ever seen or visited. Now, before I came here, I watched a ton of YouTubers talk about all the positive experiences that they had while either living in Japan permanently or just being here for a simple visit. So, in my mind, I thought Japan is this perfect utopia. I cannot wait to see everything that Japan has to offer. But we all know there's always more than one side of the story. So in this video, I want to talk to you about the top 5 things that I think no one tells you before you visit Japan. And these are things that I definitely think that you should consider if you're planning a short visit to Japan or if you're planning to move here permanently. The first thing that really surprised me or shocked me about Japan is the amount of sexual harassment and unwanted touching that goes on these crowded trains. So we've all seen the countless videos on YouTube about how crowded the trains are here in Japan, especially during peak hour or during rush hour. The part that I think we haven't seen is the number of women who have filed police reports complaining about the sexual language that they received, the unwanted touching that they received, and the just persistent and pervasive presence of sexual harassment that exists. So, this is something that I've been able to watch and see on the Japanese news. I've been able to listen to stories of women who have told me that they have been touched on the trains, that they have been talked to in a sexual manner on the trains. Now, this is a part of the culture or part of the experience that I think was very much hidden from me before I decided to visit Japan. And I think it's something that you should definitely consider or know about if you're planning on visiting Japan, whether you're a man or a woman, because although it's more likely to happen to women in Japan, it also happens to men as well. So, this is the first thing that absolutely shocked me about my experience in Japan. And it's a big deal because we all know that learning and mastering the train system here in Japan is absolutely essential. You really can't get around as a tourist or as a visitor without using the train. So you should definitely consider the amount of sexual harassment and unwanted touching that actually occurs on these train systems each and every day. The second thing that absolutely shocked me is the high cost of living that has led to a toxic work culture where people work like robots, a lot of them for at least 13 hours each and every day. Now, I wasn't expecting this from the YouTube videos from people who have talked about the fact that they've moved to Japan, that they've been able to find a job either teaching English or working in some of the technological industries that exist here in Japan. I was very shocked by the fact that the cost of living has led to people actually living and sleeping in their offices oftentimes to try to get all the work done. Now, this is really shocking coming from a place like America that has this focus on hard work and individualism. It's shocking to see how it's even more intense in a place like Japan. People are working themselves to death. Just yesterday, I had a conversation with a woman who was complaining to me about her intense work schedule. Now, she works here in Japan as a police officer, and she was complaining about the number of hours that they actually have to stand on their feet and work in front of the building that she works in. And I thought that this was really interesting, and it's something that I don't think YouTubers mention enough. The toxic work culture where people are overworked, underpaid, and struggling to make ends meet is a part of Japan's story that I think is undertold or unreported here on YouTube. And it's something that absolutely shocked me. The third thing that's really shocking about my experience living here in Japan is the lack of social interactions that you will observe among a lot of Japanese men and women who are oftentimes focused on their phones or their computers, or like I mentioned in my previous comment, work. This lack of socialization has led to studies showing that almost 70% of Japanese men in their 20s don't have a girlfriend or a wife because there is this focus on work, productivity, and less focus on going out, having all of these social interactions. So what you end up seeing is when you're walking down the street in Japan, for example, you see a lot of people walking alone. And that stands in stark contrast to the fact that when you are living in the United States and you're walking down the street in any major city, you're going to see a lot of couples. You're going to see a lot of people walking together. Now, that's something you will see much less here in Japan, people coupled and walking together, talking together, and socializing. It just happens much less here, which has led to a type of isolation that I think people don't talk about. It's led to a type of loneliness that I think people also don't talk about when they talk about Japan. The relationship between overuse of technology and the lack of social opportunities and interactions is really strong here. So you're more likely to see people who are just going about life completely alone. And they seem to be absolutely happy with that choice because they're extremely focused on success in terms of education, in terms of career. So you'll see a lot of people here uncoupled and unwilling to even do things like start a family and have children. The fourth shocker that I've seen while being here is something that I think is absolutely invisible to most visitors or even people who move to Japan permanently. And that is the fact that Japan, especially these major cities like Tokyo and Kyoto, are very inaccessible and almost impossible for people with any type of physical disability to navigate. So, one of the things that I notice on my day to day walks and interactions and tours here is I never see anybody with any type of physical disability. And I thought about it and I did a little bit of research on it. And I found that there have been a lot of complaints about the lack of accessibility, for example, on trains for a person who has a wheelchair. It would be absolutely impossible for a person who's in a wheelchair to gain access to the train system. With all of the stairs that you have to climb, with all of the people who are crowded on these trains, especially during the peak hours, it would be impossible for you to gain access if you are in a wheelchair and you're disabled and unable to walk. So that's another shocking difference that exists here. In America, I think we've made more of an effort to make sure that things are wheelchair accessible, that people with disabilities have access to the same buildings and services as people without disabilities. And we also have increased visibility of people with disabilities in the United States, meaning they are not hidden and so separate from the main population. One of the things that I read in researching this topic is that a lot of Japanese parents put their children in institutions if they're born with a disability. And that leads to the lack of visibility of people with disabilities on the streets here in Japan because a lot of these kids are put in institutions from a very young age. So the fifth and final thing that has really shocked me about living and being here in Japan is the amount of over tourism and the amount of tourists who come here and do extreme things to get clout and views on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. There have been so many times that I've been out in Shibuya or in other areas here in Japan, and you will see YouTubers doing extreme things like doing backflips off of buildings, dancing and playing loud music in the train system, yelling at people that don't exist in the crowds. This is a very shocking thing that I did not expect to see in Japan. I expected to see tourists, of course, but I did not expect to see tourists harassing Japanese citizens, yelling at girls on trains, just so that they can increase the number of people that are following them on TikTok. This is just an extreme problem that I hope gets solved, and it's something that has really shocked me about being here in Japan. It's very uncomfortable when you're sitting on the train and all of a sudden you look to your left and you'll see a TikToker screaming into their phones so that they can get attention and views on TikTok. It's insane, and it's something that has absolutely shocked me since I've been here. And I really do hope that it decreases. One of the major reasons why I hope that it decreases is this extreme type of tourism or this clout chasing that you see from particular tourists from different parts of the world has led for a lot of Japanese people to start discriminating against tourists. So here in Japan, you'll see signs saying Japanese only in front of restaurants, stores, and businesses. And I think a lot of this is fueled by the fact that we have a lot of extreme people who will come into your restaurant, sit down, and act a fool just to get views. And I think it's really sad. So that's pretty much all the shockers that I've experienced. If you've watched the video to this point, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye.